Hello. That might have been a little loud. I'm sorry. Happy Friday. How is everybody doing? Hello, Sandy and Dean and Edith. What's happening with you guys? How's your week been? I had a good week this week. Actually, pretty good week. And I got to tell you guys a story, but I'm going to wait until everybody else shows up before I start telling the story so that I don't have to repeat myself 15 times. But tell me how you guys have been. How's your week been? What you guys been up to? Did you get out there and take any damn photos yet? I did yesterday. That's part of the story. So again, I'm not going to tell the story yet. But let me make sure that this is actually working too. I always forget to do that. Hey, look at that! It is. Woohoo! Okay, it is working. It's Friday. I'm hungry. I haven't had lunch yet, but I'm gonna drink some water to hold me over while we do our chats. And maybe I'll edit. Maybe I'll edit one photo. Maybe I'll finish a photo. I'm not sure if I posted any of these on Instagram yet, Dean. But my wife is helping. This is gonna sound a little bit funny, but my wife is helping me on Instagram, managing my social media stuff, which means that I don't actually know what I'm posting until I go in and look at what she has planned out to be posted, and then I update the captions and stuff. So I don't think I've shared any of those yet, but you get to see them here while I'm editing. Hey, Christian, how's it going, bud? 2 meetings. I'm going to be photographing a custom door company. That's awesome, man. That's super cool. All right, so let's start with this whole editing thing. Actually, what I need to do is I need to export this one because I never did the export on this. I have to check and see if I have that over in Lightroom, though. I don't think so, but I have to make sure. You have not. I figured I would include these with the ones you did this past weekend or next week. Okay, for next week. Okay, that's cool. Yeah, so I didn't think we had any of these posted yet, and that confirms it right there. Steve got off early, sitting at home waiting to go pick up the kids from school. Awesome. Steve, how has Maya been, by the way? And how's she doing with her photography? I don't know if she's been around for many of the photo blabs lately, but I haven't seen photos from her, so I figured she's been occupied with other stuff. Working on the bokeh theme, Sandy is doing, but I don't want to be cliche. I'm trying to be original, but that's harder than it seems. I know, right? So I knew, like, I was 99.9% sure when we did the voting last on the Blab that bokeh was going to win by a landslide, and it did. But the thing is, obviously, doing something original and interesting with bokeh is not as easy as it sounds. Sure, once you understand it, getting bokeh and shooting shallot up the field is easy to do. But doing something that's just not subject, boom, blurry background, a little more difficult. So I've actually got a couple of good ideas for what I want to do for the bokeh challenge. And I haven't decided which approach I'm going to take yet. But I've got 2 ideas in my head for what I'm going to do to make my bokeh a little bit more fun and a little bit more interesting than just plain subject, blurry background. So anyway, whoops, that's 2019 test. No, I don't want that. I got to delete that 2019 test album. We want to go to 2019 and Cecilia, and I'm not sure if I have not finished and saved this photo over. So I need to do this, but I need to clear out my filters as well. Hello, Elaine. How are you? Greetings from Belgium, and many thanks for the feedback on my white flowers in the pond discussed during the live critiques. I only saw it afterwards due to the time difference. Yeah, that's cool. Thank you very much for submitting the photo, and we're very happy to share our feedback on photos like that. And obviously, we love it if you guys can be present, but we also understand during those shows that, you know, whatever time we're doing it here is maybe sometimes 1 a.m. somewhere else. So, you know, we're happy to share our feedback even if you're not able to watch the whole thing. In fact, Wayne fell asleep on us last week while he was watching because it was like midnight in the UK. So totally get that. It's all good. Maya's good. She's thinking about what to do for the bokeh challenge. Awesome. That's awesome. Tim, hello, buddy. Tim, tell everybody the exciting news. Come on, you got to tell them the exciting news and why I'm actually going to make a sort of serious attempt to edit today. But you got to tell them, Tim. Hello, MJ. How are you? Watching from the Philippines. That is fantastic. Welcome. Happy Friday to everybody who is joining. I'm super excited. I've had a good week, like I said. And yesterday was a particularly good day. Hello, Felipe, right? Felipe. I think I'm remembering correctly. I think. If I'm wrong, Felipe, please correct me. Where's this bokeh theme y'all keep mentioning? So, a hobbyist photographer. This is for... tell us. Felipe, okay, I did remember correctly. I'm so bad at names that I'll think that I remember the name right, but then this little thing in the back of my brain goes, that's not the right name. That's not the right name. And so then I get scared and I either don't say the name or I say it, and most of the time I'm actually right, but I'm just so scared of saying it and being wrong that a lot of times I'll think I know a person's name and I won't use it because I just don't remember. I don't think I remember, even though I do. Oh, TC, that's you. So TC, the bokeh theme is part of Blab. So Blab is every Monday at 6 p.m. It's whatever, 11 Zulu, UTC, GMT, pick your universal time code standard. Anyway, when is it due? Not this coming Monday. On June 3rd, the bokeh challenge photos are due, and the bokeh challenge photos must be new photos. Every 2 weeks on Blab, if you're not familiar, we're doing a challenge where you must take a new photo for the challenge, and you have 2 weeks to do it. So you're down about a week, but that gives you until the 3rd of June, looking at the calendar again, to take that photo and submit it for the challenge. Then we look at all the photos and discuss them on the live stream. So, yeah. Well, you got to do it then, TC. You got to get out there and take some damn photos. I mean, come on, man. What are you doing? Christian said, also maybe flying to Vegas for a photo shoot, all paid. Dude, that is awesome. Like, high five for that. Internet high five for that. That's super cool. Tim might be... oh, there he is. I was just finishing a call, so he probably didn't hear what we were talking about. Tim, I told them that you got to tell them the news so that we can talk about why I actually have to attempt to edit today on the show. All right. Elaine says, I showed my wife afterwards the critic show, and she said I can attend the show live at night. That's awesome. Dude, that's super cool. I'm super excited. Yay! Oh, hey, Jeremy. How are you? Thank you for subscribing. I appreciate that. Hadn't expected a notification email so soon. I go live actually fairly regularly, so if you want to hang out, if you have questions, anything else, this is a place to get questions answered. See me attempt to edit, because with all of the chat, I don't often get a ton of editing done. In fact, let's, again, attempt to get this started. But Tim just shared the news. Tim got an iPad for editing, and being so new to Affinity, Tim says, I told Spyros that he had to show me how to use it. So I'm going to start by finishing up this photo that I didn't realize that I hadn't finished up. So I need to save this to Dropbox. And then after I get this saved, I am going to actually start editing. And here's kind of an exciting bit of information too, which is that I actually am working with, this isn't it right now what I'm using, but I'm actually working with, oh, I just saved that to the wrong place. See, this is what happens when I don't pay attention to what I'm doing. Okay, this is where I wanted this to be. So let's flag and rate that and then organize this to where it needs to be so that this is saved properly. All right, so let me tell you guys what I was doing yesterday, because yesterday was super fun. Do I have any iPad instructional videos? Yes, I do, honey, and I will be sending those to Tim. I also need to make a playlist, so if you want to add to the to-do list that I need to make a YouTube playlist from all of my iPad videos, that's a thing that I should do. Hello, Cochise. Bacon and eggs and coffee. That sounds good. That sounds super good for a guy who hasn't had any lunch or breakfast yet today. Okay, so I saved this here. Now I can go back and finish what I was actually doing, which is now turn this into a JPEG and share this out to the folder for Cecilia. So that goes there. So anyway, story time. I'm still loving my big 5K 27-inch iMac that I don't think I could ever use an iPad. You know, I kind of thought the same thing, TC, until I tried an iPad. I love it. I genuinely love it. I'm not, you know, if it's not for you, whomever you is, you know, UTC or anybody else, like, I totally respect that. It's fine. I don't think that the whole world has to do what I do, but I got to tell you, it's amazing to be able to work this way, interacting directly with the image. It's really wonderful. So I'm doing saves here just to finish this image out that that I had finished editing, but I hadn't saved and exported and all of that other stuff. And I'm not using my export automation because I think I broke it, so I have to go in and fix it. All right, Affinity Originals. This is Cecilia, so we're going to add that there. Okay, this has been saved. One last save move, and then I can close this. Save, and then close. Hey! Hey, PM, how are you? How are you? I know you love it. TC says I want to be like you, LOL. I was using a mouse for editing, and it wasn't working for me. Yeah, using a mouse for editing is like trying to edit with boxing gloves on. It's awful. So I convinced... I've convinced like 2 or 3 people now, at least through my videos and just through this kind of stuff, to not me like being, you need to buy an iPad, but people seeing what I'm doing and how I'm working, and realizing how powerful and how great it can be to edit on the iPad. So I've actually convinced a few people at least to give it a try, which I think is pretty amazing. Can you tell us if you do basic adjustments in Lightroom before importing them in Affinity? Do you ever use the raw filter in Affinity? Elaine, that's a really good question. As of right now, no, I am not. Or yes, I do. I'm sorry. Yes, I do my basic edits, my raw edits. And hey, PhotoFin, how's it going, bud? I do those in Lightroom. And the reason I do them in Lightroom is because I prefer the raw edits that I get out of Lightroom compared to the raw engine that Affinity has. And in fact, I can show you. Let's do a demonstration, and I'll show you the difference in where I find Affinity's raw processing engine to be weaker. Can only stay for a second. Okay, that's cool, man. I'm glad you popped in, though. How is everything going on your channel? I haven't had a chance to catch up on your latest videos, but I keep an eye out on what you're doing, Finn. And I keep saying it. We should collab sometime, bud. Okay, so I'm going to grab not a photo that I necessarily need to edit right now, but one that will, I think, demonstrate better why I think the Affinity Raw engine is a little bit weaker. So I'm going to grab one of these pretty colorful images, one where I've got a little bit of burnout in the highlights of the image. So this is an example right here, and I'm just going to make a quick adjustment. Oh, Elaine, I convinced you to buy the iPad Pro. Apple should hire me, right, guys? I'm the iPad sales guy. Okay, Finn, send me a message, like for reals. DM me on Instagram, and let's talk about a collab, okay, bud? This is really cool. It's a small world. It is really cool. Cochise says, I was shooting here in central Utah yesterday for a CBD company ad campaign. A farmer was wearing, oh my God! Dude, that's amazing! Oh my God, Cochise, that is amazing! You saw one of my shirts in the wild? Yes! That is so cool. That makes me so happy. I love that. That's so cool. Oh, God. Oh, you just made my day, Cochise. I mean, you guys all make my day, but that's awesome. Okay, Finn, you say, I still use the old 4th gen iPad. Yeah, I'm not sure if the 4th gen can run Affinity Photo. Affinity is a pretty intense program, so I think there are some iPads that it doesn't support, but iPad editing is still something that I think is really fantastic. Okay, so to Elaine's question, what I'm going to do here is just go under Light, and what I want you to look at is the highlight recovery that I can do here. Okay, so I'm just going to take the highlights down to -100 and look at how much detail Lightroom was able to recover here. And if I also take the exposure down, we're recovering even more information there. So this isn't how I would do this, but I just want to show you an example of what Lightroom can do right here. So there's that. Now I'm going to just export this original RAW file. And what that means is I'm going to take the RAW file and I'm going to export it here to iCloud Drive into my Affinity Imports folder. So I'm making a copy of the RAW file outside of Lightroom, and I'm going to open that one into Affinity Photo so that we can look at the RAW editing in there and compare them. Let's see here. How do you do color grading from that software? Good question, MJ. I'll also do a demo on that as well. Farmers love me too, right? I'll take the farmers' love. I'll take anybody's love. I'm a lover, not a fighter, right? TC says, I will use my iPad Air to edit once in a while when I'm feeling all Spyros-ish and whatnot. Right. Right. Let's see. PM says, maybe you know what maximum available means at export. The compression is worse, equal, or better to PC. Okay, good question, PM. So what you just saw there, let me just do this again. Where did my share option go? All right, I'm just going to back out of this for a second. What did I do here? You guys, I am totally lost right now. Let's just go to the info tab. Here we go, sharing. Okay, so I did export original, and then you have, we'll do files again. No, this isn't where we want to see it. We want to see it, bring back my share icon. That is a super weird little bug. Did you guys see that? Look at that. The share icon disappeared on me. Now I switched back to edit and the share icon came back. Interesting. I just found a little Lightroom CC bug that Adobe's got going on here. I should file a bug report. Okay, so I'm going to do just a save to files. And when I do that, save to files, I have small and maximum available. And the question, who just asked this question? PM says, the question here is what maximum available means at export. What this means is it is a maximum resolution JPEG file, and the JPEG, as I understand it, is saved at maximum quality. With, of course, every JPEG has some compression, but the compression level is set to 100% for highest quality, lowest amount of JPEG compression. So that's what you're getting there, is a maximum quality, maximum resolution JPEG generated from your RAW file. And how that compares to the PC, I think it would be basically identical to Lightroom CC and Lightroom Classic on the desktop, making those exports, because again, it's a full-size JPEG with as little compression applied to it as possible. So that's what that means. Okay, so what I want to do here is very quickly get here into Affinity, and we're going to go here and import from cloud, and we're already in my imports folder, so we're just going to look for that RAW file, which I think is right here. Why does it append that giant ass string of numbers onto it when I save that? That's super obnoxious. Let me just look at my files app directly to see if that's the case. It's got to be, though, because it's today at 12:15 and it's like 12:19. Rename. That's super weird. I'm going to delete that string of garbage. I don't really need to, but I'm already here and I'm doing it, so done. Okay, let's import that into Affinity. Whoops, wrong Affinity. I still have to tell you stories. You covered me, thank you. No problem, PM, no problem. File it. TC says my iPad Air is an old one. I'm sure it doesn't have the processing power. Oh yeah, Cochise, you guys got a photo. That's awesome. If you could send that to me, that would be super amazing. That would be super duper amazing. I am so happy, guys. All right, so let's import from cloud, and let me grab that file. Here we go. So now we're looking at the same file coming in. It's going to open into Affinity's raw processing engine here. And when it does, look again. Now we're at this space where everything is blown out again, right? So first thing is shadows and highlights. And see, the options here are different too. And that's another thing that is a little bit offsetting for me, is it doesn't have the same slider tool sets it's not a direct matchup to Lightroom. And that's, every raw engine is a little bit different because every raw engine is coded, you know, individually. They're not sharing like a code base or anything like that. So like I can try brightness, and brightness does a pretty decent job. And then if I pull the exposure down, that does also a little bit. But let's see what my exposure adjustment was. Let me just make the exact same adjustments. Minus 0.38, highlights minus 100. So let's go back to Affinity. And in this case, it's brightness minus 25. That's the maximum. And then exposure would be minus 0.38. And it might not be exactly, but we'll get close. There we go. I can actually type it in. Minus 0.38. Come on. Minus 0.38. Ah. 0.38. Ah, see, this is another thing that drives me nuts, is trying to do this little bit right here is kind of obnoxious. Okay, so let's just do a quick comparison of these two. They may have made some improvements because the last time I checked this, it did not do as good a job. But now, I might have to reconsider using Affinity's raw processing engine, because the last time I looked at these two and compared them, let me zoom back into that again. Affinity did a much poorer job of highlight recovery. What's the highlight and shadow slider down at the bottom? This one is, see, I don't like that it's shadows and highlights together. You can either, it's kind of like, okay, so first of all, I don't exactly know because I'm not as familiar with with Affinity's raw engine. But looking at what it's doing, basically, my understanding is if you are pulling it off to the left, it's like taking the shadow slider, in Lightroom and pulling it down to increase the shadows, to make the shadows deeper and darker. Whereas if you push it up, it's not recovering highlights, but rather it's opening up the shadows. So it seems to me that this shadows highlight slider is more of just a shadows, is like the I just lost my ability to speak some words. The shadows highlights. Oh, look, there's a highlight slider. Okay, so let me reset this bad boy, because I was using the brightness slider before, which really isn't the one you'd want to be using. You'd want to be using highlights. So let's start with the highlight recovery. And at minus 100, just look at the difference between the highlight recovery that we get. What just happened there? This is kind of turning into a bit of a shit show, guys. Blah, right. The toggle switch. I'll explain that toggle switch in a second. Wayne, hello, buddy. How's it going? How are you? How are you? Okay, so back. No, what is happening here? What is happening here? I don't know what is going on. I hit a button and I don't know what happened, so I'm going to close this. We're going to say yes, we don't want to save it. And we're going to import from cloud again, and that should bring us back into the raw processing area. Turn it off and back on again, exactly. Okay, here we are, back to raw. Okay, so what is the toggle? The toggle switch toggles the adjustment that you made on and off. So yeah, exactly. You learn, I learn, we all learn by failing. Exactly. That's exactly right, Elaine. So watch what happens with this toggle switch right here. As soon as I start to make an adjustment, that toggle switch flips to on, okay? And then if I'm looking at an adjustment that I just made and I say, okay, well, I want to see what it looks like with that off, I can just toggle that adjustment off. The adjustment to the slider that I made stays, but the adjustment itself is turned off. That is similar to, oh, I know what I did. I hit the commit button at the bottom there. That's what happened. I hit the develop button and it took it into the develop module. Okay, so I don't want the split view. I just want a normal view. So I'm going to bring this up here. We're going to go back into Lightroom. And in Lightroom here, you actually don't have a toggle switch to turn it on and off, but in Lightroom Classic, you have the little toggle switches that allow you to turn off your raw processing options. So that's something that is technically better because you can toggle off those individual settings as compared to Lightroom. But the main thing is, let's just reset the exposure back to 0 here. We're almost there. This is another improvement that Affinity does have. Even though it's finicky, it allows you to type in a value. Here in Lightroom Classic, you can't, or CC on the iPad, you can't type in a value. So if you want like precision, that's hard to get. But what we're looking at here is, let's look at the highlight recovery and compare the two. Too bad we can't do them side by side. But if you look at this, you actually kind of got more recovery out of Affinity, but Lightroom, in my opinion, does a better job of preserving the details and the overall image, right? So if we back it back out, because I pull it down to -100, yes, this has gotten muddier. This image is muddier, right? But take a look again at the Affinity photo image, and to me, it looks muddier and flatter than what Lightroom gives you. But like I said, honest to God, I think they may have made some updates to their raw engine that I was not aware of, because this is looking better than the last time I tested it. And what that means is, I think, like literally right now today, we're going to do a test here, a live test. I'm going to take an image that I want to edit, and I'm going to process the raw here in Affinity. And then we're going to edit it in Affinity. And I'll also process the image as closely as possible to the same in Lightroom, and take that one into Affinity and edit that one the same way so we can see what they look like. TC, yes, you can do split screen on iPads, but not every app supports split screen. And that's a thing that the developer has to implement. Apple through iOS makes split screen possible, but if the app doesn't support it, then you can't do it with the app. And I'm pretty sure neither one of these apps supports split screen, because if it doesn't support it, it'll do what it just did there, which is it just opens the app, the app. Oh, Wayne, you don't have to apologize for going to sleep, man. It's fine. It was late. I get it. It's all good. It is all good, buddies. You know, your body tells you gotta sleep. You gotta sleep. Turn it off and back on again. Okay, so I think all these problems in the universe is telling you not to edit, right? Okay, let's actually do it with this image right here. So we're going to start in Lightroom. I'm going to reset back to 0, and I'm going to do my raw edits as if I normally would. And then with that same image here in Affinity, I'll do the same edits. So I'm going to reset this back to, I'm just going to discard it. So we'll start over. And I'll have to make note of my settings from Lightroom. So this is our original image in Lightroom. This is one that I wanted to edit, so we will go ahead with it. And we'll start with, my exposure is actually a little hot, so I actually want to bring it down a hair, about where I was before, and we'll take it a little bit more. I usually actually don't use the pencil when I'm editing in Lightroom. I usually just use my fingers. And I do want to do some recovery, but I'm not going to be as drastic as I was before. I'm going to go like around 47, 48, and then we'll open up the shadows a hair. So I want to get down here to see the shadows a little bit more. Okay, so that's good. Contrast, a little bit of that helps. We'll go with a 10. And the whites, I'm going to push a little bit, not a lot, but a little bit. Because if you push the whites, you start to burn out what you brought back with your highlight recovery. So it's a little bit of a balancing act between the two. Now color, I definitely want to pop a little bit of, actually, you know what I should be doing here? Don't forget, oh yeah, I should, yeah, thank you, honey. I need to announce the ClickCon Pass winner. But here's the deal. Before I announce the winner, I should give the rest of you guys a chance. So, hello, Bella JB. If anybody wants to go to ClickCon, but you haven't because you can't afford the pass or whatever, I have a pass to ClickCon that I want to give away. It's a $169 value, gets you into ClickCon so you can check it out, come take a trip to Chicago and hang out with a bunch of photographers. And I am going to share that link in the chat. All you got to do if you want to win a chance to go to ClickCon is tell me on the post that I'm about to share the link to why you want to go to ClickCon. And then at the end of the show, I'll do a random drawing based on the comments. And you have to be able to go. So keep in mind that you have to be able to go to ClickCon. I don't want to give the pass to somebody who can't use it. So if you can't go, please don't enter. But if you can go and you want to go, but you haven't been able to because of the cost or whatever else, this is a chance for you to win a pass. So go to this post to for a chance to win a pass to ClickCon. And PS, I gotta type things. /ClickCon. Okay, that's the link right there. You can go check that out. Also, I forgot to start a thing, so I'm going to start that thing now. Go check out some merch if you want to support the channel. Link also in the chat right there. Okay, so what I am going to do is copy the raw settings that I was using on these other images because I want a consistent look across these images. So it looks like I actually did pull my highlights all the way down. So I may adjust that on that other one, but we're going to use that as the base. All right, now I forgot which one it was. It was this. No, I already edited that one. Which one did I grab? The easy way is to go look at the file, which 0115. Okay, back to Lightroom and 911, 101, 109. Here we go. 115. This is the one. Okay, so we are going to reset this all, and then we are going to paste settings. Okay, so this looks good, and I'm going to keep that. Now I'm going to jot down all of the settings here that I have in my trusty little notebook and replicate them as closely as possible in Affinity on the iPad. So exposure is plus 0.29. I actually took the exposure up. Contrast is at 0. Highlights is minus 100. Shadows is plus 21. Color, I have white balance should be the same. I'm not touching that, but vibrance I have up to 15, and saturation I have up to 20. I normally don't go that crazy on vibrance and saturation, but this one calls for it. Effects, no texture, teensy weensy little bit of clarity, so clarity is plus 2. And then detail, I have sharpening of 60, sharpen 60 with masking at 84. Okay, so those are the settings from Lightroom. Now let's go to Affinity, and we're going to import from cloud, and we're going to grab that for the last time. And let's do the same thing. And I'm actually going to enter the values where I need to enter them so that everything is as precise as possible. So here for exposure, we're going plus 0.29. So up. And then I got to jump way down here, highlights, and I got to pull the highlights to minus 100. Yeah, I already can tell you I'm probably not going to like this. Shadows are plus 21. So we're going to type that in, 21, okay. And then vibrance is at plus 15, 1.5, boom. And saturation was at 20. So I'm just going to check these off. Exposure, highlight, shadows, vibrance, saturation. Clarity is at plus 2. Right there. And then sharpening, which is in a different little area. Lens distortion, chromatic, post-crop vignette. Nope, none of this here. Detail refinement. So this one is a little bit different. Radius and amount. So they have more of like an unsharp mask approach, but let me see if there's actually any sharpening. This is tone curve, metadata, master. That's just a viewer. So yeah, it looks like that's the only place, the detail refinement. So I have to approximate the sharpening here. So what I'm going to do is just kind of go back to my former Photoshop settings that I used to use. So radius, actually, first let's do this. Let's just pull it up and see what it looks like in the extreme. Okay, that looks awful, of course, so we're not keeping that. So I'm just kind of looking for a benchmark, a place that I feel comfortable. Since I'm approximating, we're going to use that. Okay, so let's commit this. We're going to develop that. Okay, and now we're in Affinity with this image. This is the raw processed image from Affinity. Now what I'm going to do is go to, back to Lightroom, and we're going to do a comparison of this. We're going to save to files. We're going to go maximum available, and we're going to spit this over to Affinity Imports. This is a JPEG. I should just name it so that we know where it's coming from. So I'm going to take a slightly different approach. No, I know what I'll do. Okay, we're going to go back to Save to Files, maximum available, and we're going to put it in the assets just so I don't get it confused, in the files. Oh yeah, my wife says there's new merchandise in the store, including items for business wind-up. And yeah, there would be more, but somebody didn't give her the right transparent logo image, which means I screwed up. So there'll be some updating. Okay, so I saved that. I got the wrong tool here. We're going back to Affinity. We're going to place. We're going to place from Cloud, and then we're going to go into the Assets folder, and we're going to find, where did it not save? There it is right there. Now I have to drag it to place it. So we're going to drag this over the top, and then we're going to place it in. So let me just set this up. We need to go here. It is usually 3456, 3456 by 4608. Perfect. And then we'll position this at 0 and 0. And then we will name this layer the Lightroom layer. Okay, so here we are. This is what the raw processing looked like coming out of Lightroom. And I don't need this anymore. And then this is what it looks like coming out of Affinity. So what I'm liking better is the Lightroom one. I'll tell you that right now. The Affinity one feels a lot flatter. Also, if you look at, look at the hair here. I put my saturation and vibrance up quite a bit. And doing that here in Affinity blows out the saturation, or blows out the detail in the hair. See how just literally burned out these oranges are in her hair? But if we go back to the Lightroom one, look at how much detail Lightroom preserved, even though I pushed those colors up quite a bit with the vibrance and saturation. So that's one of the things there that I prefer in Lightroom's raw processing versus Adobe's. Then if we come over here, I pull this off, and just look at how flat and muddy her face got when I did all of that highlight recovery and the exposure adjustments and things like that. Right? Like the Lightroom one, in my opinion, looks way better. There's a lot more contrast in there. The detail is good, and technically there's more detail in the Affinity one here because her forehead isn't as blown out. But I'm okay. You know, there's still detail in her forehead here, but I want that brighter spot of light there. Yeah, LR versus Adobe. I do mean Affinity TC. You are correct. So that right there is another thing. And then again, if we just kind of look at the image overall, this whole image looks and feels flatter to me than the Lightroom image does. The Lightroom image to me just has more detail, more contrast, and does a better job with the raw processing. So as of right now, maybe they did update it, but I don't think Affinity did because I haven't updated the app. So I think I just wasn't expecting, I just wasn't seeing the sort of not as good results because I didn't do a full process there. But in comparing the two, to me, it's pretty clear that the Lightroom image is the better. The Lightroom raw engine is the better raw engine, which is why I prefer that. So in the future, if I understand it, in fact, I want to do a quick look because I think they are working on a complete rewrite of their raw processing engine. That Affinity is. So I'm just going to look this up real quick and see if that's the case. Affinity raw processing update. And see if there's anything on it. I'm not seeing anything quick here, but I'm pretty sure I saw somewhere that they're rewriting the entire raw engine. And I'm looking forward to that update because when that happens, I will test it again. And if they do, then I will consider using Affinity's raw engine if it's as good or better than Lightroom's on my raw files. Now, one thing I want to say before we move forward is that each raw engine, each raw processing engine, first of all, it's its own code base. But second of all, each camera has a unique raw file. Each manufacturer does, and then each camera for each manufacturer has a unique raw file. Not always, but basically they always have a unique raw file, which is why if you've ever purchased a newer camera and have been using an older version of Lightroom, you couldn't open the raw files because Lightroom didn't support them yet, because Lightroom hadn't been updated by Adobe to support the new raw file from that new camera, whatever it was. All of this is to say it takes work to support a camera in a raw engine. And I can't say this with any like real certainty because I haven't done a comparison. But if you think about it, this makes a certain amount of sense. Affinity is probably going to spend more time making sure that their raw processing handles photos from Canon, Nikon, and Sony better than like Panasonic, Olympus, Pentax, right? Because those three are not a huge part of the market the same way that Sony, Nikon, and Canon are. And that's not to say that they're deliberately saying, oh, we're going to make, you know, Olympus raw files look like trash, but that they are going to put more effort into making sure that raw files from Canon, Nikon, and Sony look good, because that's the vast majority of shooters out there. And if you want to use Affinity and you want to do raw processing and you take it in like I do and you go, oh, that looks like trash, you're going to be more likely to say, well, I don't want to use this. And maybe you go back to Lightroom, maybe you don't use Affinity at all, and then maybe you've lost a customer. This is me speculating. I don't know this for sure, but this is kind of how I read the situation. All of this is to say that you should do your own testing like I just did here with Lightroom if you use Lightroom, or your raw processor of choice and Affinity, because you may find that your raw files look better or worse in one or the other, because the raw files are different and each one has to be coded in to be processed and all of that kind of stuff I talked about. So that was really long-winded, and I apologize for it being so long-winded, but it's an important thing to think about and consider and do if you're thinking about changing raw engines, raw processing. This is why I will continue to stick with Lightroom, because even though I'm not using Photoshop, because I'm using Affinity and I'm doing all of my editing here on the iPad. And there are things about Lightroom on the iPad that frustrate me, like the fact that I can only export JPEGs. You can't export TIFF files or anything else. All you can do is say, I want to save it to the camera roll, I want to save it to files, and then you can pick between one of two sizes. I mean, that's trash. That's trash, and it's really annoying. Whereas in Affinity, right, like in Affinity, I can go to my export panel and I can choose from, what is this, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 different file types. I can set exactly the size of the image that I want. If it's JPEG, I can tweak all of the JPEG compression settings. You know, all of these options are here for me in Affinity, and this doesn't exist in Lightroom, and that is frustrating. But, you know, you work with what you have to do the best that you can do with the tools that you have. TC, you are correct that Photoshop is coming to iPad in 2019. That's the official word from Adobe. There's no word on when other than 2019. And I've seen a little bit of it, both at the Apple keynote towards the end of last year when they announced the new iPads, and then just recently they did their 99U, Adobe did, and during that they had like a 30-minute segment where they showed off Photoshop on the iPad a little bit more. And based on what I saw, it looks good, but here's the thing, it's not here yet, so we can't do anything about it. When it comes, I will absolutely be using it and testing it, and if it's better than Affinity, maybe I move over to Photoshop. But I still want to see Lightroom improved because you want those options available to you. Now, I expect that that stuff will come, and I'm fine waiting. Like, I'm not mad at Adobe because it doesn't exist there, right? I'm a little bit frustrated that I have to jump through some of the hoops that I do, but I also understand that developing this stuff and making this stuff work takes time. Developing software like this is hard. I don't pretend that I know even a tiny bit about it, so I understand that they probably have a shit ton of work and bugs that they're working with and all of this other stuff. TC says, if Photoshop comes to the iPad, it may just get me to move to an iPad Pro. Yeah, I mean, you know, that might be the right time for you, and that's cool if it is. I totally respect that. All right, so we've established that Lightroom has a better raw processing engine, at least for me in my raw files, and that each of you, if you want to consider using Affinity, you should test it yourself and see what your results are. And based upon that, I want to edit. I should edit, even though it's 13 minutes too. And I'm probably not going to run late today because I have to pee so bad. You guys don't even know how bad I have to. Like, I would be doing the pee dance if I wasn't sitting in a chair right now. But at any rate, let's do some editing. I'm just going to dump this background layer because I don't need it, the Affinity one, and we are going to do our editing here. So what are your editing questions, you guys? I could always go and come back. I could. But I also do need go pee and come back. All right, I'm going to go pee and come back. Just go ahead and pee. We can't see anything. All right, I'm going to go pee. You guys are giving me permission to go pee. My mic's right here. Otherwise it would be funny. So give me a minute. I'll be right back. I'm going to wash my hands too. So here goes the pee. Pee break. Oh my God, that is so much better. I really had to pee. Kettle back on, refill time. Pee break, everyone. Right. It's a good thing I went pee because somebody go move his chair and take his iPad. Thank you, Bella JB. But it's a good thing I went pee because I remembered that I need to show you guys how I color grade here as well. Who asked about the color grading? I know somebody did, and I can't remember who. It might have been MJ. I think it might have been MJ. Either way, I know somebody asked about color grading, and then there was something else that I was going to show here. Or talk about. You may just move me to get a... Okay, I got to back up the chat here for a minute, guys. I'm sorry. Okay, got the iPad. Okay, we talked about the raw. Former... How do you do... It was MJ. MJ asked about the color grading. Okay, so color... Let me make notes so I don't forget what I need to talk about with you guys. Color grade... And then there was another question that I know I wanted to answer. And then I think what we'll do, now that I've peed, is actually we'll go through an edit, step by step. So you guys can see the whole process. How did you take the photo? This is why I bought the iPad. My buddy did. Aperture, file it. What's the highlight? We did the highlights in shadow. We got the toggle switch. Yeah, we definitely learn when I fail. Get up and dance. That's a good idea. Split screen. Click on. Thank you. Okay, I found it. Global contrast question. TC asked about global contrast in Lightroom. And yes, I do use the global contrast slider, TC, just because I like to use that to set a baseline contrast, and then I do my contrast refinement when I edit in Affinity with a curve, just like you mentioned you typically do. So you'll see that when I go through here and process this edit. But what I want to do now is just quickly go over the color grading process that MJ was asking about. And don't forget to lift the seat. I did lift the seat. Oh God, yeah, it was real relief for me to pee, Brant. Yes, it's water on my shirt from washing my hands. That is water on my shirt. Go wear a diaper next time. Honestly, TC, I don't use profiles that much. I just use the default Adobe profile because it sounds stupid, but like I just don't. I have no particular reason. I should go through them and check them and see if there's one that I prefer. But I've been using the default one ever since the profiles were expanded and upgraded. Okay, so color grading. How I like to color grade is by using gradient maps. There are different approaches, but I really like the gradient map tool. So this is the gradient map adjustment in Affinity, and it's almost identical to the gradient map tool, the gradient map adjustment layer in Photoshop. The interface obviously is a little bit different, but this is how it works. So the gradient map, you have different colors set along this line. So this line represents, I'm just going to get rid of this one for now. This line here represents the bright and dark values in the image, right? Over here on the right-hand side, where the red currently is, that represents all of the dark values in the image. So I'm just actually going to change that to black. And when I change that to black, look at what happens. All of the shadows look like shadows because I changed the shadow areas to black. Now watch what happens if I turn this blue into white. It's going to look like a black and white image. Why? Because I just mapped this image with black to the shadows. So this took all of the shadow areas in the image and mapped them to black. And then over here for white, it took all of the highlight areas and mapped them to white. And it's a gradient because along the way, it grades itself and transitions from color 1 to color 2. So you can add additional color points along this line. So if I tap in the middle here, or sorry, I got to click add, or how do I add a color point? I've done it before. What is going on here? Okay, I have no idea why I can't add a color point all of a sudden. But Let's bring this back up, and maybe this will make a difference. I have no idea if it will or not, but okay. Like, seriously, I don't know how to add a color point. But, oh, I can save presets. I totally forgot about that. At any rate, the whole idea here is that you map colors into the areas for your color grading. Now, obviously, this looks terrible right now. I'm going to trash this and just start with a new gradient map because maybe I'm doing something wrong. There we go. See, now I can add these additional color points. I don't know why I couldn't add it before. But I'm adding a bunch of color points. I'm going to trash a bunch of those because there's way too many there now. I just want a few extra. But basically what you can do is along the way you can adjust and add even further colors. So let's say in the red here, we have red down in the shadows. And then in the lighter shadows, I want to go to an orange. A brighter orange for some reason, right? So we'll go with like that. Okay, now it's mapping red to orange here. And let's say here I want to do these blues. So I'm just going to pick like this teal right here. And then I want this green in the middle for whatever reason. And then I want this blue over here. Now again, this looks like trash right now. But what you do with your gradient map then is you pull the opacity down. And when you pull the opacity down, what you'll see is that those colors are mapped over the image, grading it by putting the colors that you dictated into the tonal value ranges you dictated. Right? So in my shadow areas, if we look down here into the shadow areas, boy, I cannot get my fingers on this thing. My shadow areas now have this red and some of that orange in them. And if we get up to the highlight areas, like up here on our forehead and whatnot, we have this blue in there. But if we look in some of those not quite so bright areas, like right here, we can see some greens. Like look down here on her cheeks. Now this looks like this is terrible color grading. This is not a good grade. But what I want to do is illustrate what it does. You can see along some of these areas, like along her cheekbone here and down, some of that yellowish green is coming in because that's a brighter area, but it's not so bright. Is that like color? Yeah, it's just like, when I was working in Photoshop, I color graded the exact same way using gradient maps and then adjusting the opacity of the gradient map. So it is exactly like doing this in Photoshop. You use the gradient map adjustment layer, you set your gradient up with the colors you want, you adjust the opacity to the point where you're happy. So I color grade with a combination of this, and then part of my grading is also the curves adjustment, which I use for adjusting the contrast of the image, which I tend to think of as part of the grade as well. And so like for these images, I'm actually doing a little bit of a cinematic look. So I'm not going to use this curve, but what I'm doing with these images is crushing the blacks. Whoa, I added a point there that I didn't want. So let's reset this bad boy. And just throw a few points in here, pull this up a little bit, and what that does is that crushes the blacks a little bit, it flattens them out, and just reduces the dynamic range of the image a little bit, but that gives it a little bit more of a cinematic feel. That's called crushing the blacks, when you take your curve and you take the bottom end of it and you make it look a little bit more like a hockey stick because it comes over and then it goes up. You often do that with the tone curve as well. Yeah, so that's what it looks like. All right, so we're going to trash this layer because we don't want it right now. And do you guys want to see me actually walk step by step through the edit process? Because if you do, I'll do it and actually explain it rather than, you know, the sort of half-ass editing that I normally do while we're talking. But if not, then I might just wrap this up because I'm kind of hungry and I haven't eaten. Yes, okay. We got a yes, so we'll do it. All right, so the first thing I do is I add a blank, it's called a pixel layer in Affinity. It's just a blank layer. So if I take this lower layer away, it's a blank transparent layer. And that is my retouch or my cleanup layer. Unenthusiastic person, hello Jeremy, hello Ed, oh hello Edgard, but then go eat. Okay. It's a layer that I'm going to rename cleanup because I do my cleanup on this layer. So cleanup is looking for stray hairs or blemishes or anything like that that I want to get rid of. Hey Spyros, I've been playing with this idea in my head for weeks, and I've been wondering what your opinion is if you have one. Okay, Luis, let me know what it is. And designing in grayscale before adding color simplifies the most complex elements of visual design and forces you to focus on spacing and layout elements. I agree with that. I do agree with that 100%. Color adds a lot of complexity to an image, and color can overwhelm things. And you are right. In fact, I don't do it all of the time, but one of the things that I do is add a helper black and white layer when I'm dodging and burning. You are very much on the track of what a lot of people think and what a lot of people do. And it doesn't, it's not complicated either. It's just going and, where did it go? It's right there. Throwing a black and white on there, right? And later on, I'll delete this. But it's there as a layer. Interestingly enough, I would have to make some adjustments because that black and white layer is blowing crap out. So I would probably need to go into the reds and the magentas and tone it down a notch so that we don't lose all of that detail that we're losing before, right? So like that, it is a good idea to do that because what you can do now is, like, I can objectively look at her face and you can see, some of the details there that are normally obscured by the color. Because she used like the polka dots and stuff on her face, I'm actually not going to use the black and white layer for this. But yeah, the bottom line is that yes, using a black and white layer while you're editing is a good way to help you maintain objectiveness about your edit. I don't do it a lot, but I do sometimes do it. And what I recommend is that you give it a try and see if it's something that does work for you as part of your editing process. So in this instance, we've got our cleanup layer set. So now what I'm going to do is switch to what Adobe calls the in-painting brush tool. And the in-painting brush is like the healing brush, but if you notice up here, there's also a healing brush. And the healing brush is like Adobe's healing brush. The in-painting brush is like the content-aware brush in Photoshop. And I really like the in-painting brush. I use this for like 99.9% of my cleanup. So as an example, we're going to set the hardness to 0, which is already there, flow 100, opacity 100. The width I'll adjust as I go. And then I want this to current layer and below. And that is because now what it's going to do, it's going to sample from the below layer and use that to paint in and fix the things on the layer that I created called cleanup. And I'll show you what I mean. So let me just hit a couple of spots, like right there, just these little, little bitty blemishes that I want to clean up like this. And this is why I love this tool. It's like super good and super fast. And I can run through and just hit a few spots. And now, if I turn off the lower layer, you can see those spots that it painted onto the new layer, covering up the blemishes from the layer below. And if I turn off this upper layer, you can see them come back and go away. So that's why I use that cleanup layer. Subvids, how are you doing, bud? Yeah, a bit late, but that's cool. No worries. I do need a drink, though, now that I just peed all the liquid out of my body. CMYK stands for cyan, magenta, yellow, and K for black. And CMYK is a color space or color scheme. And it is, if I recall correctly, the subtractive color set, which is to say that subtractive colors, thank you, yeah, it is subtractive. And exactly what TC said there, it is used in color printing, and it's used to describe the printing process itself. So I used to work on a printing press, and I have a first-hand look at what CMYK looks like, because on a 4-color press, you have 4 printing units, and each unit lays down 1 color. So you start at the one end, and you have, typically, if I recall correctly, you start with the black. And then after the black, I'm trying to remember the order they went in. I think it actually goes Maybe it goes in the order literally CMYK, but I don't remember. It's been like, oh my God, it's been like 20 years since I worked on a press. I'm just trying to remember the unit order. It doesn't matter. Either way, each unit prints down just that color. And as the colors layer up on top of each other, due to the subtractive nature of them and the medium that they're in and printing, you end up with a full color print. So when you are preparing an image for print, you may see them ask you to prep your image in the CMYK space. Generally, subvids, I don't use it because I'm not often sending my images to places that need CMYK. If you were sending to have it printed on like a 4-color offset press that I was just describing, you would need to convert and work in CMYK. But if you're sending it off to print, you know, to a photo printer or something like that, they're all using the native color space in your images, the RGB color space, because they're working with computers, they're printing to printers that handle and understand the RGB color space. You have PSDs that use it. Yeah, I have a few because when I've gotten business cards printed, they needed CMYK images. But generally, I don't use it. So let's go through the cleanup here and just finish up this. I'm not going to go like super intense if I see something that's taking me a while, just in the interest of things. But I like to just kind of zoom in and out and look at the bits and bobs in the image that I find a little bit distracting. If it's distracting, I want to remove it because I want the focus to be on the image and not on, you know, this little bitty element here that's distracting. Now, I do know that I've got this over here that I got to get rid of, so I'm going to hit that. And I've also got these lines from the fish that need a little bit of cleanup. And I'm going to hit them like this because what I want to do is kind of try to preserve some of the color variation that is here. And if I just go in a straight line like this, watch what happens. It creates artifacts. That actually did an okay job, but it can create artifacts that kind of ruin the background and make it actually more obvious that you've done something rather than less obvious that you've done something. So I don't really even need to take out the whole thing because it's falling out of focus anyway because of the depth of field. In Photoshop, they look good, but not on export, not the same colors. Exactly. The reason is what you're seeing in Photoshop is the RGB because your monitor, your computer uses the RGB color space. What you see may be an approximation of what the CMYK is supposed to look like, but it just doesn't look good because that export isn't designed to look good on a monitor. It's designed to look good when printed on some sort of a physical medium, paper, whatever the case might be. So that's why it's going to look like trash when you export it because it's not meant to look good on the computer. Okay, so again, we're just breaking up this fishing line that I used to hang the fish. Catch this over here, and then this bit up here is probably the worst. There we go. And there may be more, but they're not obvious, so I'm not going to spend a ton of time trying to get rid of them. Okay, so the main cleanup needed to be on her face, so there's just a little bit more I'm going to do here, which is hit a couple of these little texture areas. Okay. This right here I don't like, so we'll get rid of that. And I think that's probably really pretty good for cleanup. So the next thing I would normally do, which do printers prefer? You have to ask the printer. Because if the printer, like I was describing earlier, is working with printers that are designed to print from RGB color space, inkjet printers, laser printers, any printer that hooks up to a computer, for the most part, is going to take the RGB color space, which is your native color space for your images, and you don't have to worry about it. But any kind of printer that's going to use an offset sort of printing press process is going to need CMYK. So you honestly have to ask the printer what they prefer. Because it's going to vary based upon the methods they use. But more often than not, I think you're going to run into RGB and it's not going to be an issue. Basically, think of it like this. Unless somebody tells you that you need to use the CMY color space, you don't need to use the CMY color space. Because more often than not, you just don't need it. Okay, so we've got the cleanup done. Now, what I was about to say is the next thing I normally do is a skin softening, and I have an action set up. So home printing absolutely use RGB. Your inkjet or whatever printer you have that you print at home, that is not a CMYK printer. Not a CMYK at all. Now, the skin softening this is called a macro, which is the same as an action in Photoshop. So what it does is it sets up a layer that is a high pass layer. And what you do with that high pass layer is you invert it. And then after you invert the high pass layer, you change the blending mode to linear light. And as part of the process, you also blur. And the whole idea, let me delete the mask for a minute. The whole idea is to give the image this soft look. And I have a video. If you're interested in how to do this skin softening thing that I just described here, let me know, because I have a video that actually takes you through the process step by step. Each layer you have to create, each setting you have to change, each thing you have to do in order to make this happen. This is what it looks like applied without any kind of a light touch. Yeah, the Orton effect, TC, that's exactly what we're using here, is the Orton effect to soften the skin. Now, again, that looks awful. We don't want this across the entirety of the image. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to throw a mask layer back on there to cover everything back up. And then what I do is I just select my mask, I grab my brush, I set my flow pretty low to around 10% or so, and then I brush into the areas that I want to soften. So, and I need to set the color to white. So now I can come in here, and if you see it, it's going to be very subtle. Just brush it in the areas that you want to soften up a little bit. And that will smooth the skin while maintaining texture and not making the person look fake. Now I have to be a little bit careful here because all of the color dots can take a little bit of, can lose a little bit if I hit them too hard. So I'm trying to kind of go around them as I do the skin softening here. And I try to go with a light touch. Even this I think is too heavy. So what I tend to do is actually apply it a little bit more aggressively with the 10% flow, but then adjust my opacity of the layer to tone it down so it doesn't look quite so aggressive. So I'm just gonna do a tiny bit on the neck here, but as soon as we hit the paint, I'm done. I'm not softening any of that up because it's going to, it's just like if I do that, you can see it looks funny. It doesn't look good. So I'm just gonna undo that brushing. And I basically wanted to focus it on her face. So with that now, if I turn it off and on, you should see the difference. And you can see there were some color spots that I hit. So I should probably go in there and refine that. But I'm first going to just drop the opacity because taking the opacity down to around 60% or so will probably bring them back well enough anyway. So there's it on. There it's off. And I'm okay with a little bit of no, I'm not. I'm going to go in back to that layer. I'm going to take the brush. I'm going to go back to black. And I'm just going to very quickly just brush over the little color spots that I lost a little bit. I'm going to turn the flow up a little bit more to bring those back. It was principally these right here. So again, if you guys want to know how to set up this skin softening layer to do what I just showed you, I've got a video that actually shows you how to do it. And let me know and I'll put that into the chat. So that's my skin softening that I do on my portraits. Once that's done, I do a dodge and burn. Now I have a macro for my dodge and burn, but I've recently switched to a new method and I have to update my macros. I just haven't done it yet. What I used to do is use a 50% gray layer. Two different 50% gray layers. In fact, I'll set them up so you can see them. one labeled skin and one labeled hair. And yeah, you know, I don't like it very much, TC. I think you could do some basic skin softening with it, but for me it's a little bit too not heavy-handed, because you can set your adjustment on it, but I do need to play around with it a little bit, but I can pretty much guarantee that I'm going to prefer to do my skin softening in here, where I can control it way more precisely, and leave that texture slider for possibly actually increasing texture if I want to do that in a particular image. So I haven't messed around too much with that texture slider, but that's how I'm probably going to approach it. That's me. You can, you know, anybody obviously can use it however you want. But my initial testing has led me away from it for softening skin. Okay, so these dodge and burn layers are both 50% gray. One set to soft light blending mode, the other set to overlay. And the reason you do that is because once you take a brush, usually the dodge and burn, and you brush on a gray layer, it's going to brighten or darken it. Okay, so this is going to look ugly, but I just want you to see what it does. I'm going to make my brush bigger. I'm going to set my flow to 100, and I'm going to do a dodge on the gray layer. And when I do, you should see it brightening up this area right here. And I'm just going to keep doing it over and over again. And and if I turn it off and back on, you should see that area coming in and going out. And there's nothing wrong with dodging and burning this way, but I was listening to a podcast, and somebody was talking about how they happened to notice that when they dodge and burn with the gray layers, it tends to diminish the colors a little bit, rather than if they dodge and burn through curves. And dodging and burning through curves is a very similar process. You don't set up gray layers, though. What you do is you create a curves adjustment, and then you come in and then you just use the curves to brighten it up. That's your dodging. So I'm going to change this to dodge and hit OK. And then you throw a layer mask on there, and that layer mask hides it. And then on the layer mask, with a paintbrush set to white with a very low flow, I usually go around 6 or 7%, you then brush in to lighten up the areas you want to lighten, and you make another curves layer where you pull it down to darken it, which we'll do after that, and then that allows you to darken. I've got an Orton effect action, so I'm going to give this a go. Cool, subvids, cool. Yeah, exactly. I'm looking for more precise control, TC. Hey, no problem, TC. Thanks for hanging out. I'm glad you were able to pop in and hang out for a bit. Have a good day, bud. Okay, so I'm not going to highlight very heavily on the forehead because that's already pretty bright, but I am going to hit the nose just a hair here, and then I want to catch the under eyes because I want to brighten that up a little bit. And in a perfect world, you're not going to notice me doing anything right now because what I'm going for here is really subtle. I'm looking at the image and I'm brightening up the bright areas a little bit here, and then I'll be darkening the dark areas after I set up my burn layer. And this process, I've talked about this before, this process takes a while. Dodging and burning can take, you know, sometimes I'll spend 45 minutes to an hour just dodging and burning an image, like legitimately. Texture is best for grass, etc. I agree. Yeah, that's my feeling on it. Cochise, I agree with you on that. So this area right here along her jawline, I'm going to take my flow down to like 4, and I'm going to just very lightly hit that there to give that a little bit more brightness. And then I want to catch this under here a hair, and then we're looking at just sort of the general rest of the image for the dodge and the lightening up. So I'm trying to look a little bit more globally here. So I'm going to make my brush a little bit bigger, and I'm looking like at the side of her arm and how that's catching the light, so it needs to be brought up a little bit. And right here, you can see the reflection of the light on the paint, so I need to take that up a little bit. and this arm here catching it, a little bit on her torso up there. Whoops, I undid it on accident. I don't want to do that. Okay, we're back to where we should be. I'm going to make my brush quite a bit bigger so I can catch this leg here and brighten that up. And again, you guys probably aren't seeing much of anything. You know what I should do though? I'm sorry, I should have done this earlier. I'm going to turn on show touches so you guys can actually see what I am doing. Funny, huh? I could see, now you can see the touches that I'm making on here. Sorry about that, guys. I should have turned that on earlier. So up here, I want to get up on the sock a little bit. And again, you probably won't notice anything, but now if I turn this off and on, you should see the brightening and the darkening as I toggle this layer off and on again. So we've gotten everything except for the hair. The hair I actually like to be a little bit more aggressive on, so I'm going to take my flow on the brush up to about 10%. I'm going to make my brush smaller. And hair is where you can spend the most time dodging and burning. So we'll come in here and start to hit just the lighter areas, because right now we're just doing the dodge. I do all the dodging first, and then I come back and I do all the burning afterwards. I want to kind of, I'm not going like for hairs, but just sort of generalized areas, looking at the brightness and then the darkness areas. So right now I'm hitting all the bright areas. It's been a while since I like legit edited here, guys. Tim, are you still hanging out, or did you have to get back to a call or something? Because I know Tim probably is peeking in between lunch and going back to work. All right. So like these highlights up here, like to catch all of this. I'll probably hit the butterfly a little bit. Right over here. Looks good. And again, you're looking for all of the highlight areas. Texture is best for the grass, yeah. If you guys have anything else you want to chat about, go ahead. I can try to talk and edit at the same time. We'll see how good I do, though. It's been a while since I've actually really edited on a stream with you guys. And I'm just going to do a quick check here. See if there's any areas that I missed that I want to hit. So right up in here, I think needs a little bit of attention. Have the day booked off. Ah, Tim, that's awesome. So Tim, have you gotten a chance to spend any time with the iPad or with Pixelmator Photo or with Affinity or anything else? Fill me in, man, because I'm excited for you. As well for you, Elaine. I'm not sure if you're still hanging out or not. I got to scroll back up and see. It's been a little while. I hope I remembered your name. See, I have that part of my brain right now. It's telling me it's not Elaine, but it is Elaine. See, I did remember. Haha. All right. So I hope this is helpful to you guys. And if you have other questions, let me know. And I will be happy to answer them and or demonstrate. The brush is a little bit big, so I'm going to make it a little bit smaller. I really want to get at it, but I've got the floor in the house and then a few other things, so I've only spent a short time with the iPad. Yeah, I totally understand that. I totally understand it. All right. Well, at least, you know, you get to hang out and watch, which is cool. And this gives you ideas for when you are able to sit down with the iPad, right? But this part of what I love about this so much. This seems crazy, right? But like I can wake up in the morning, and if I'm, you know, laying in bed and I can't fall back asleep, and I don't want to read, but I want to do something, I can pull my iPad out of the drawer and edit a photo while I'm laying in bed, which is amazing, right? Like amazing to be able to edit at this sort of level and do it, you know, with this sort of interface and basically be able to do it anywhere. To me, that's incredible. And I know it's not perfect, but nothing ever is, right? It's just better. You know what? I should probably start putting music back on again. I never put music on. I used to put music on for these, though. At some point, I forgot. I'm going to... One thing that's a drawback, yeah, the screen is a fingerprint magnet. That part, yeah, that part I agree. I need to update something so I don't forget. I'm going to go to my checklists for my live stream startup. And for Friday Hangout, I'm going to add music. Turn on music for stream. So I have a list item now, so I won't forget that. And then I should quit this so that I don't miss any of the chats. Yeah, my understanding is, Tim, that is, the oleophobic coating that they're using is one that obviously isn't great for managing fingerprints, but the older oleophobic coatings that they used on the previous iPads that didn't support the pencil, I think they interfered with the pencil and how well it would work. And so they sacrificed the fingerprint situation in order to make the pencil experience better. And I can't help but think that they're probably working on better coatings to improve the quality of the coating on the new iPads. Okay, there's an area right here that I want to get more. See, I'm on the. I don't know how far I've been, how long I've been on the erase brush. I've been on the erase brush far too long. Far too long. Okay, that's annoying. That's super annoying. Okay, I need to go change a setting because this is not going to do. We're going to go into here, tools, select synchronize, touch for gestures, all of that's fine. Interface, left-handed, text in. You know what happened was I must have double tapped the pencil without realizing it. But they don't have an interesting, they don't have an in-app pencil setting. That's frustrating. Because I just did a bunch of dodging and burning, and I didn't actually do any dodging and burning. So let's go back to where I was when I actually had the dodge and burn tool. Holy balls. Have I just been erasing everything? I was over in the blue. So I have to go back to here. And make sure I'm on the brush tool. And now we can actually get back to this. On the beta version of Affinity Photo, which I actually have, I joined and they added me to their beta program. I wonder if it was when I did that. I'm going to have to check that. They do have a setting in here. I believe it's under Tools. Is it under Tools? Oh, they have a dedicated pencil. I'm going to be disabling the double tap because I don't like it switching. Now, obviously, I can't do that here, so I have to pay more attention to where my tool is when I'm using this so that I don't waste all that time that I just wasted. But that's also why I like to check periodically and see, am I on that mask? I'm probably not even on the mask. All right, we're just coming back here. On the mask, let's do this. This will take me to 3 o'clock at this rate. All right. Let's turn some music on. Boom. Monster Cat coming to the rescue. I don't even know what we want to listen to here. Let's go to music. Browse advanced. Let's go for cheerful music. Filter. We're just going to hit play. All right. Now we got some music to go with this. Okay. So let's see if we are on the right tool. Our dodging and burning is actually happening. That's good news. So we can go back at it and hope to actually accomplish something here. Turn that down to here. See, it's weird because, like, I know I need to have the music up enough so that you guys can hear it, But then when it's up, I feel like I'm trying to either A, talk over it, or B, like it feels too loud for the conversation, even though I'm the only one talking, which is a little bit funny. All right. Just going to check again. Yeah, that's dodging and burning happening there. That's what we want. Ah. Okay, you know what? I can tell you guys the story now. Okay. So yesterday was a pretty fun day. My wife and I woke up at around, well, not on purpose, 5:30. We had our alarms set for like 6:30, 6:45. But what we did yesterday was pretty fun. So our local high school, the photography teacher contacted me and asked if I wanted to come. And I've done this a couple times before already, where I've gone and I've talked to their photography classes and just like shown some of my photography and did a lighting demonstration and took questions, talked a little bit about my YouTube stuff, and you know, came in as a guest speaker to the class, which has been fun. I've done it 2 or 3 times now. But this time I suggested to the teacher, I said, well, what if we actually did a photo shoot with the kids, so they could see like the entirety of the process that goes into preparing for a photo shoot, executing a photo shoot, the things you got to think about, like the lighting, all of the stuff that you guys get to see when when Angela and I get together and do a live shoot. So she thought it was a great idea, and we went ahead and planned it out, and it happened yesterday. So we got to the school right away when school started at like 7:30 in the morning to set up, and I took in my wood frame for building a pool because we decided to do a water-based photo shoot. Let me just check my dodge and burn here. Okay, there we go. Dodge and burn across everything. That's what I wanted to see. So now let me set up my burn layer, and then I'll get back to the story here. All right, burn, take that curve, pull it down, throw a mask on it, rename it, and then we're good to go. Burn, 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 baby, burn. Cheer from music, Rob Zombie, right? Okay, so we set up. One of the students did the teacher's makeup, and then we filled the water with a bunch of flowers, cut the heads off of a bunch of flowers and put that in the water. And then I set up the lights, explained everything we were doing along the way. So had the kids, participate in this, asking them questions, explaining the difference between hard and soft light, doing all of this kind of stuff, which was really fun. And then we executed the photo shoot, and I got several good shots of the teacher in her wardrobe in the water. And it was inspired by Ophelia and Death of Ophelia, that painting. So if you're familiar with that at all, then you should know kind of what it looks like. And then after we had our shots, we gave the kids a chance to shoot. So I had my trigger so they could hook their cameras up and take photos of the teacher using the lighting and working with the posing and, trying to understand what happens with this shoot. And it went like really well. There were several of the kids that you could tell it really had a positive impact on them, and they really got excited about photography, which obviously you guys know makes me very happy. Okay, I'm gonna start over with this because I was going a little bit crazy with my brushing because I couldn't see it. So I'm gonna delete that mask, and I'm just gonna throw a new mask on, and I'm gonna start over from the top. I'm actually turn my flow down to like 6. I was on the hair flow before there. All right, so we did that. That went from like 7:30 to around 10:30. Then we had to clean up, and the cleanup took Oh, for crying out loud. Okay, we're good. Yeah, they did have a blast doing it. The cleanup took about half an hour or so. And then I went and I spoke to the other photo class, the one that wasn't able to be part of this demonstration because they all had, you know, other classes at the time. And showed them a little bit of what we were doing. Did another lighting demonstration in the class. And generally just had a really good time. It was a long day, even though, you know, the day was done at around, I think it was like 1 when we packed up to get out of there, finally. But it was just a really excellent, super fun day. I took a bunch of behind-the-scenes, well, I didn't take them. Kim, my wife, took a bunch of behind-the-scenes photos that I'm going to post some on my Instagram story and stuff once I go through them. And it was just a really fun, really good time. And I'm talking to the teacher about going back to do a photo critique with them as well. And I got to wait to hear back from her on the date. But she said we might be able to do a photo critique yet this year. If we did, though, it would have to be in the next couple weeks. I'm going to turn my flow up a little bit. Make my brush a little bit smaller. And if we do, I think that'll be a lot of fun because I think, you know, photo critiques obviously can offer a great deal of good feedback. And being able to give them some of that and maybe, you know, help them grow and inspire them a little bit more, that would make me even happier. So I think the photo shoot thing, though, is something that we might do at the school regularly, which, if we do, that's going to be super fun. Especially when we can involve them more and more, like developing the concept and then coming up with ideas on how to execute things like the practical effects that we might need. You know, building set pieces, things like that. Like, the more we can involve them in it, I think the better it's actually going to get. So I'm excited for the next one that we might do. I don't know if it'll be this fall in the after the new school year starts, or towards the end of next school year at around this time now. But I'm looking forward to doing another one like that because it was really fun. I had a really good time. You guys know I like to teach. And so any opportunity to get in front of kids and share with them and you know, help them grow as photographers makes me even happier. They were high school kids, so we're talking like 15, 16, 17-year-old kids. This was the senior class. I don't think it was all seniors, but we're talking like junior, seniors, so like I said, 15, 16, 17-year-old kids. Who were part of the photography program at the high school. How big of a room would I need for a studio to shoot a family with a 100mm or longer lens for full-body portraits? Are we talking warehouse size? If you want to shoot like a whole family, God, I mean, okay, let's figure this out here. 100mm field of view. Let me just take a look at this here. Okay. My son started school, kindergarten, and I pitched the idea to her teacher about showing up and spending a morning taking pictures of the kids to share with other parents. That's a cool idea. The school might be wary of that because of, like, you know, legal issues and consent issues and stuff like that. But that otherwise, it is a really neat idea, yeah. Okay, I don't know what this means. I'm trying to find some... Okay, so with a 100mm lens, here we go. You have a 20.4 degree field or angle of view. Okay, so basically, to figure this out, Sandy, what you would need to do is look at it like this, right? You've got your lens, okay, right here, wherever the camera is, and your 100mm has an angle of view of 20.4 degrees. So this, whoops. So this angle here is 20.4 degrees, right? So all you need to do to figure this out is figure, okay, how wide is the family? And how tall is the family, right? And as long as that fits within the angle of view, you're fine, right? So let's say, you know, the cameras is here, and let's say this point here is 10 feet, right? And at 10 feet, I'm making these numbers up, but let's say at 10 feet away from the camera, that angle of view here is, you know, whatever. We'll say it's 4 feet wide, right? So the camera can see 4 feet wide, right? If you need to put, you know, 10 people next to each other, that's going to be, I don't know, let's say that's 20 feet wide. That's probably extreme. Whatever. We'll say it's 10 feet wide, right? So if it's 10 feet wide, you need to cover an area that's 10 feet wide and not 10 feet tall, but at least 10 feet wide to get the width. And if you get it 10 feet wide, then you should be fine as far as the height goes. All right, so then you take that angle and you extend it outward, and you figure out at what distance does that 20.4 degree angle widen out to be the width that you need. So 10 feet wide might occur at, you know, whatever, 50 feet, okay? So then you know you need a warehouse, because 50 feet... Thank you. Thank you very much, Jeremy. There you go. PhotoPills app will do what I'm trying to explain right here. Jeremy, thank you very much for that resource. I didn't even know about this PhotoPills app. I'm going to make myself a note to check that out. Note, because that seems like a really helpful resource that I could use. PhotoPills app. So 100 millimeter lens on a crop sensor covers 7 feet, 1 inch, 30 feet away. That's what you need to figure out, Sandy. Thank you very much, Jeremy. All right, let's get back to the edit. So we were in the burn, and we're in the home stretch, honestly, with the burn, because once we get the burn done, we're going to do the color grade, and then we're going to be doing eye sharpening and wrapping it up. So this will take maybe, I'll probably be able to wrap this up by 2 o'clock, which is exciting because I'm getting hungry. But yeah, most of that kind of stuff can be figured out once you know how to figure it out. And obviously, you know, knowing how to figure it out isn't always easy. That knowledge isn't necessarily commonplace. But, I mean, that's what I try to be here for, too, is to answer those questions if I can. Or we have folks like Jeremy who remind us that we have apps that can also solve these questions for us. All right. So the color grade is actually going to be easy because I've already got a color grade set for these images, and I don't need to come up with the color grade. All I need to do is grab the color grade from the layer from another image and bring it over. So let me check my dodge here and burn. I want to get a little bit more in here, get some more depth into this, so darken some of this up a little bit more. And let's see how that looks. Yeah, that's a little better. A little bit in here too. Okay, I think that's pretty good. Now what I like to do is I like to group the dodge and burn layers together. Just name them DB, and then I can back out and flip the dodge and burn layers on and off and see how they look. And I like it. I like it. I like it a lot. So that's good. Okay, so now I'm going to do my eyes. And my eyes sets up 2 layers, very similar to the dodge and burn layers, as well as a pixel layer for sharpening the eyes. So I like to start with sharpening the eyes, and I'm using the high pass sharpening method here. So I create a high pass filter, set the radius, change the blend mode, and then add a mask. I'm simplifying it, but that's the basic process to create the sharpening layer. So again, we're going to brush on the layer mask to reveal the sharpening. So I'm going to just go over the eyes And again, this is going to be pretty subtle, so you may not even see it. I'm also going to hit these forehead wrinkles because those are nice. That texture there is really nice. And then I also like to usually hit the lips because that's another place that we like to connect to as humans. And her nose ring right there. Now, I'm going to turn this on and off. You probably can't see it, but I can see the difference. And then I'm going to go to the curves, and I'm going to first hit the brighter areas of the eye to brighten those up, so the white, as well as the pupil, the coloring, and the highlight, the catch light from the soft box that I used. And I'm not looking to change the color. I'm not trying to whiten the eye, just brighten the eye. I always stress this when I'm doing the eyes, because I'm never trying to whiten it up, because our eyes have a natural color to them. Lots of buffering. That's a bummer. All right. And now I'm going to switch over to that other layer, which is the darkening. This is very similar to the dodge and burn process. And then I'm going to hit the rim of the pupil and the rim of the iris. I was calling it the pupil. It's the iris. And these other couple of these eyelashes here to just bring that out a little bit. And what we're doing is we're adding contrast to the eye. So darken out here on the outer edge of the iris. Hit this little bit of the pupil that's showing, and a little bit along the waterline as well. And in aggregate, when I group the eye layers together and label that eyes and turn that on and off, it should look pretty good. I'm not sure if you guys can see it, but I can see the definite change in the contrast and the brightening and the sharpening of the eyes there. Lots of buffering. I'm sorry, subvids. Yeah, my stream looks to be good as far as the feed that I'm giving, so it must be something somewhere along the internet is choking you up. Okay, so all of that's done. Now I'm going to grab my grade layers, which I already have in this image right here. So I have two layers. They're already grouped. I have a gradient map, and the gradient map that I'm using is a 3-point gradient with magenta in the shadows, blues in the midtones, and then reds in the highlights. And that is set at an opacity of 7%. And then in addition to that, I have a curves adjustment that I'm using to crush those blacks like I talked about. So you can see this. It's a gentler looking hockey stick, but I'm bringing up that black point and making it grayer and lowering the contrast and the dynamic range of the blacks with that. So what I'm going to do is grab this whole group, copy it to the pasteboard here in Affinity, and then open up this other image and paste it in. So I go to the 3 tabs, I go to pasteboard, and I choose paste. And you can see that grade is applied just like that because that group now exists here. If I turn it off, you can see the shift. Hey, Elaine, how's it going? I was just wrapping up the edit here. Just added the color grading. So there's the grading off and there's the grading back on. And you should be able to see that difference coming through. The magenta and the blue and the reds taking over, because without that there's a lot of yellower, greener, bluer tones, more yellow and green in this, and I wanted to shift that over into the warmer side of things, but not too warm, which is why I added that magenta in there in that gradient map. So this is the map. Again, shadows are magenta, and then the mids are the blue, and at the high end in the highlights we have the red. So that's the end of the image. That's the end of the edit. So I'm sorry you're coming back in at the end of it, Elaine, but I just wrapped this up. But if you want to watch the replay, I went through every step of my editing process on this photo right here, and you can catch that as soon as I wrap up here in just a minute. So what I do afterwards is I save a copy of this. I like to save the history. This is a really cool thing that Affinity offers that Photoshop doesn't. You can actually save the undo history with the image, which means when I open this in the future, I can actually still see my entire undo history of this image, which is really amazing and really cool. Jeremy, that's a really good question. I don't, but you know what I will do is I will make a video about that. Let me just make myself a note. In my... There it is, my video ideas to-do list. So, color grading with gradient maps. So that's a good video, but to just... I think I can explain it a little bit better briefly. Essentially, let me turn this off again, and let me just add a simple 2-color gradient map on here. You can think of it like this. With a gradient map, sorry, what just happened here? All right, I'm going to turn that off. I'm going to go in here. I'm going to apply a new gradient map. Okay, I'm going to delete this middle point. I just want 2 points right here. Okay, I'll you know what? Then I'll do a color grading video. I'll leave this off for now, and I'll do a dedicated color grading video for you guys. So look for that. I don't know exactly when, but I'll actually try to get it out fairly soon, within the next couple of weeks or so. But no promises there, just because I don't know how quickly I'll be able to get to something like that. I'll have to plan. I got to think about talking about it and everything else, so that I present it in a useful way. So this is the end of the edit, and I think with that I will wrap up the stream. So I want to say thank you, as usual, to everybody who decided to come out and hang out and join the stream. I've seen lots of videos about color grading for video editing, but not as much for image editing. That's pretty interesting. Color grading probably was a little bit more heavily used in video until just recently, where it kind of spilled over into the photography world. And that's not really fair, because color grading has always existed in photography. It just was maybe thought about and talked about a little bit differently. So, with that, oh yeah, got to announce the winner. Thank you. I almost forgot. That would have been bad. Let me go to my Facebook page, see if anybody else commented on that post. If not, then it will be very easy to pick a winner, because it was just one comment and one person before. So let me find out what we got here. I'm waiting for the page to load. It's an easy selection because there's only one comment, and it is Frank. I don't know how to say his last name, but it is Frank Shrestha, I think is how you say it. Frank is the winner, so I'm going to contact Frank and let him know that he won a pass to ClickCon. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining. I appreciate it. Make sure you have a wonderful weekend. And if you have questions about editing or anything else that you'd like to see in these live streams or in my videos, hit me up, let me know, and I will try to accommodate that for you. Otherwise, have a great weekend. Make sure you get out there and take some damn photos. Bye! Have a nice weekend, everybody.